There's that big growl we all love. Happy summer, everyone.
Woohoo!
Welcome back to the Three Bears podcast. My name is Peyton. I'm here with my dad, Jason, and my brother Parker, and we're here just to try to help you in different various aspects of your life in ministry or in your every single day. And today we have kind of a different topic that we're going to talk about, and that is an effective summer camp. Different ministries that we've got going on. We've all three been involved in a different aspect of different part of church camps. We're going to try to help you out with that today. But before we kind of get into that, let's do just a 2 week recap of stuff that's been going on. So Dad, Parker, whoever wants to go first.
We've been in full VBS swing. So I mean, we're just doing all that. It's been great. A lot of my stuff is anything I really do here is pre-planning and executing the week of, or whatever it may be. So like this week, I've just been mainly chilling, hanging out, doing some stuff in the mornings to get ready for that night. But a lot of my work is done in the pre-prep, decorating the church, getting all the media ready, and making sure I have people in place to keep us all safe. And it's been good. It's been a great time. A lot of my past 2 weeks has been VBS pre-planning, and we're in VBS this week.
Yeah, that's great. I saw one of y'all's reels that you put out on Facebook about the kids recreating the storm with the flashlights.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. That was really a cool way to look at that story in the Bible. So I know y'all are doing great. Y'all are in VBS too, aren't you, Peyton? VBS
Yep.
this week. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you had some souls saved, you said. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
We've our youth, I'll kind of go with how my 2 weeks have been is pretty much just been again preparing for VBS, preparing for church camp. We have our youth as VBS kind of very different than the rest of like the little kids. But what I wanted to do is kind of give back to our community and serve has been the theme word of the week. And we've still been doing our Joseph Bible study going throughout his life and the things that he went through. And kind of recapping the things that have gone on for this week. We've helped out doing goodie bags. We've helped out our church. We've helped out church members. We've helped out missionaries, different things that we've got going on. And it's very different for the kids, but they've realized that we need to pour into the people that pour into us. And they've really, really enjoyed it. And getting a bunch of the youth boys to clean the church vans yesterday was eventful. But they've never washed a car in their entire life. But it was great, and it's been really cool to see them serve.
Yeah, I saw them. They even stained a barn one day this week, so
Hmm.
that was really awesome. For me, we've been this has been my week to be running the weight room with the boys, and so it's been a good time in the mornings. Getting up really early and watching the guys in the gym, running them through their paces, and taking all the football guys, kind of building that relationship and rapport with them. Last week, Peyton and I were both in Springfield, Missouri, at the ABA national meeting. It was a great meeting. Peyton is no longer the director of the president of the youth fellowship. He is now a trustee of the youth fellowship, one of the advisors. So I got elected to serve on the standing missionary committee, which is a ministry that I'm very excited to be involved in. Really excited to be able to pour into missionaries. What guys have poured into me, I get a chance to pour into others. Had a great time of fellowship. Had some horrible flights, but nevertheless, had some good times. And actually, last Friday and Saturday, Maddie and Parker came down. We got to spend a couple days with them and got to munch on. By the way, I think somebody's half baked ice cream is still in the freezer. It may not be there after tomorrow. So somebody left their ice cream at the house.
So okay.
But so as Peyton was saying, we're going to be jumping into today's podcast about church camp. We kind of kick around over the previous weeks what we're going to talk about. And next week, actually, all three of the Bears are going to be in church camp. Parker is going to be at what's your church camp called, Parker?
It's just called Tall Timbers. It's like I think it's almost called like kids camp. So
Yeah,
it's just a Tall Timbers here in Louisiana. It's about 45 minutes away, but it's secluded, which
yeah,
is nice. You don't, I think you get cell service, but we actually take the kids' phones up so they don't get them.
nice.
So we actually, that's something that's been set long before I even got here.
Yeah,
And obviously we're at kids camp, and a lot of parents can't be there, so we actually have a time to, hey, call your mom, call your dad at night,
yeah,
call them and talk to them, just so they do get that
it's awesome.
staying in touch with mom or daddy.
I know your mom's actually been to Cindy's been to Tall Timbers, and
Hmm.
it's a beautiful camp. And I know you've led worship there before. Peyton, have you ever been to Tall Timbers?
I've never been there.
No,
No.
I've seen the sign for it. It's not too far off the
Mm-hmm.
interstate, but
Mm-mm.
next week Peyton and I are both going to be at Bog Springs Family Camp, which is a camp that Parker grew up at. He's always been there. He's led worship there many times, and a matter of fact, all three of us last summer led the recreation. Well, actually, Parker and I followed Peyton, and he
That's
led
right.
us as the recreation director at next camp. And that was enough for me. I'll never do that again, I don't think. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience, and we love church camp. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I'm almost positive that all except for Parker, I think Parker missed his very first year. He did not go to camp his 1 year old, I don't think, because he was only born a few months before that. But you guys have been to camp every year of y'all's lives, and it's been a part of our life. It's part of our summer. We all plan for it, and we love camp. And what we want to talk to you guys about today, our listeners, is how to get the most out of church camp. I know we have a lot of student pastors, a lot of pastors who listen to us and go to different camps, and maybe you've already been to camp, and maybe there's something that won't help you this year, but it'll help you next year, we hope. And we just kind of want to talk about how to get the most out of a church camp ministry, because that's what it is. It's not a vacation. It is a week of ministry where, as Parker said, cell phone service is not good, thankfully. I know Peyton has a principle where they take away cell phones as well. And I challenged everybody in our Facebook group about how we are addicted to our phones. And next week at camp, instead of grabbing your phone, grab your Bible. And so Peyton's going to kind of lead us for the rest of the way, and we'll all jump in and add for some of the topics we're going to talk about. I hope you find something that is a
Yeah.
blessing to you. So Peyton, go ahead, man. Lead away.
Absolutely. So, as we kind of all talked about, church camp is a huge part of a lot of student ministries and a lot of churches, their summers. But there's a huge part about church camp that should go on before. So, first off, let me ask you the question: what is your philosophy in regards to church camp? Like, why do you think church camp is important? Maybe there's a parent here who's listening and they've kind of been leery about, do I send my kid with that church to go to church camp? What is the importance of what could happen at church camp?
Yeah. I feel like a great aspect of church camp that every parent should consider is our kids are so connected to the world today. They're inundated. No matter how much we try and shelter our kids are inundated with worldly influences. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there is no worldly influence at camp. It's still there, but it's a whole lot less than it is here. And the reason I say that is when you have kids that are from the world, there's going to be some of that. There's always going to be, I want to look a certain way to impress a certain
Hmm.
person or things like that. But, the TV, the music, all that stuff, we try and limit as much of that and really just put kids under the influence of spiritual things the whole week at camp. And my personal ministry, it's our church's ministry purpose statement, mission statement is we want you to be closer. We want you to get from where you are to where God wants you to be. And every one of us experienced something like that at camp. You're always able to get closer, no matter how spiritual you might be. Camp is an incredible place for that to take place and happen.
Absolutely. What about you, Parker?
What was the question? It was how do you like tell parents about like camp? Well, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember
like
how exactly what it
what is the
is.
importance? Like, what is the importance about camp?
So I think there's nothing more you can really add to like getting away from worldly distractions, but I think it's also a good catalyst for possibly sparking um good habits of Bible study. Because I know at a lot of camps there's personal quiet time. And so even
Yep.
at 15 minutes or 30 minutes a day, whatever it may be, you get it for um 3 days at the minimum. Some camps will do it like, hey, instead of like doing it at our normal time at 12, we're gonna do it at 7 o'clock on Friday before we pack up. Hey, let's all wake up. Whatever you may do. But it's a good catalyst to start good habits because
Yes.
you can set aside that time to, hey, I'm gonna read my Bible and pray at a certain time in the day. And so I think that, I don't think there's a disconnect in a lot of campers between Friday and Sunday, but I mean there is like Friday.
Yeah.
Typically at 12 o'clock, you get your phone back, signal comes back, and it's like boom, TikTok. So I think the importance of camp is trying to set that good habit in those 3, 4 days, whatever it may be. So that way, whenever Saturday rolls around, you know, oh, I don't have to read my Bible, but it's just part of my routine now at this point. And I understand routines get crazy with kids, but I mean, trying to set good habits is important. So I think that's a good part of camp
Yeah.
is habit, routine habits, getting
Yeah,
that Bible study and reading in.
really
I
good
think that's a
point.
good benefit of
Right.
camp.
A huge
Absolutely.
thing, a huge thing that I think about camp that is so important for somebody just to think about, and if you're considering why, I want you to know that church camp is a safe place. It is a place where your child will be challenged, and your child will hear something that they may not hear, anywhere else. And there's something that could be said, or something that they could do, a decision they could make that could change their life completely.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important that your child's life can come back and they could be a completely different person. Now, it's going to be hard for them to make the disconnect from who they were at camp to whenever they get on the bus Friday and go home. That's whenever the reality sets in.
Yeah.
But they will be vulnerable. They will have to be vulnerable at camp. Hopefully, I've tried to tell all of our sponsors and our leaders who are going with us this year that who you are and how you lead and how you act at camp is how these kids are going to react. So if they see that you're not vulnerable, you're not modeling Christ and the different aspects of church camp, then they won't either. So if they don't see you in your personal quiet time whenever they have it at camp, you reading your Bible, then they won't read their Bible.
Right.
So I think that's so important that church camp is a place where they can become vulnerable, their life can be changed, and kind of like Parker said, it could be a catalyst to something that will change their future.
Yeah.
But along with that, and we'll kind of get into the next thing, but another huge thing about church camp that I think that needs to be done before they get to camp. If you're a church, if you're a staff, even if you don't even go to church camp, pray for those who are.
Hmm.
Pray for your students. Pray for your leaders. Pray for people driving the vans. These people have taken out time out of their week to come. We've been praying. I've been praying over our church camp and our kids that are going for months. Even though I didn't know a final number, even though I didn't know who was all going, I still know that that week needs to be basked in prayer
Yeah.
because that's the only way is if the Holy Spirit is in it and that He's the motivating factor beside why we're here,
Yeah.
then He's going to bless that. And
Yeah.
I think that's huge that we can do that. But y'all have any other comments about regards to why church camp is important, things to do before church camp besides the planning, the organization, before we kind of get into like the logistical side of camp?
No, I think we all nailed
Oh,
it. I think it's in a really good spot, and just kind of segueing into some of those preparation things that we have to do. I mean, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes for camp that people don't realize.
yeah.
Hmm.
I know that I know Peyton created a whole bunch of forms along with y'all's administrator there at the church, y'all's administrative pastor and worship pastor there, Brother Paul, does a phenomenal job at camp. Matter of fact, I straight up copied almost everything that y'all sent and shared it with our group the other day. Thank goodness for Adobe Acrobat where you can change PDFs around. But I did give him credit. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes on. I'm the registrar for our camp, and when you mentioned numbers, that's one of the things that I have to do. I've got to figure out all those things. But we our program committees elected preachers the previous year. This guy's been looking at what he's going to preach. At our camp, we have different speakers every service. Some camps have one evangelist, and but that guy's preparing. He's preparing messages. He's preparing himself. And if you ever are, just to let anybody here knows that gets a chance to be just a week long camp evangelist, it's no different than any other revival, but you don't get air conditioning during the day. You're out and about
Hmm.
ministering among kids, and it can take a real toll to be that guy. I was that speaker a couple years ago at Next Camp, and man, I loved it, but my voice was not the same for. I remember telling y'all when a few years ago that it's a good 6 months. My voice was still messed up from all that, the strain of that week, and but so there is a lot of preparation that goes along the scenes. You mentioned your buses. I've got to go tomorrow and get our van all serviced up, and so yeah, there's a lot of preparation behind the scenes that goes in to getting ready for camp. Letting parents being formed and all those things. So what are some of the thoughts that you guys have on preparing for camp?
Go ahead, Parker.
I see like a lot of different sides of it because I'm in the process. Like I'm not in the bands that I'm in. I'm not the one leading the bands. I'm just essentially showing up, playing music, or doing the worship, helping play music, and then just MD mic. I'm not really singing. I'm just showing up, helping direct the band, music director, playing piano. So I don't really do much. Just during the day, we'll have like a celebration type service. I don't really know. A lot of different places call it a lot of different things, like a morning service where it's more fun music. And then, past that, I'm just hanging out with kids. We'll probably make a volleyball team and play volleyball if there's a tournament or whatever. But then also like the camp I'm going to next week, where I'm actually one of the adult chaperones, I have responsibilities. I've got to be doing certain things. And while Crystal, our kids ministry director, has been getting ready for um, kids camp or in VBS, um, what's happening is I'm like servicing the vans, because the youth are taking our vans in one of the trailers. So I had to make sure that there's air in the tires. We had spare tires, had the stuff to change the tires, oil in the vans, make sure they're gassed up. And the maintenance man helped me with some of that, gassing up the vans. But I was like helping him do that this week at the beginning of the week. So it was like, hey, taking care of the vans and making sure they're ready to go. And then on top of that is, okay, so youth are taking both vans and one of the trailers. So like making sure we have the vehicles to take the kids to camp. So I'm driving Maddie's Jeep with the trailer, and we're taking Crystal's van and then another person's van. And so we're all going. It's just all the logistics of that as a chaperone and as a staff member. It's just a lot of like making sure everything is set, because I've always been the type to pre-plan as much as I can, uh, because an event or a plan without pre-planning for me has always been like, hey, you're 50% ready to fail. And it's not like catastrophic failure, but yeah, just pre-planning events and stuff is always the best way to go. But I mean, whenever it's worship, that's the other avenue that I do it in, like camps and whatever. If I am the worship leader, I've got to coordinate with finding the band, and then getting everyone chord charts and hey, we're gonna have a rehearsal at this XYZ time. Before here's load in, load out, here's the logistics of where we're staying. It's just a bunch of stuff that's planning for camp.
And,
So I mean, I think whatever you do, planning for camp, you've got to pre-plan it, because if you don't, it's like you're setting yourself up for failure.
I'm glad you're pre-planned enough, Parker. You're pre-planning a lot, man. You're pre-prepared, I feel like, with this time.
I try to be. I don't want to
um,
fail.
Great. You're
but
doing great,
oh
bud. And so, something I didn't mention teachers. There are teachers that are
yeah,
Hmm.
preparing here, but let me ask you guys this on pre-planning, okay? Because I think there's some preparation for ourselves that needs to happen at camp. And when it comes to that, I wonder what are some ways that we can just one or two quick things for maybe a first time sponsor, that they can kind of prepare themselves for, to get ready for camp. What are some things that y'all think for a first time sponsor, or maybe a multi time sponsor that's not gotten the most out of it?
I'll go first. A huge thing that I think is very, very important is a clear communication of what is expected of them as sponsors.
Yeah.
For example, I've told all of our sponsors, I was like, yes, you're going, and I want you to make sure that the girls are safe, make sure that the room is clean, and all of that. But I've tried to challenge all of our adults that I want you to at least pull one kid aside that week and ask them how are they doing spiritually that week. And that gives them a clear goal. And I have two more things. Another thing I think is very important is leaders don't isolate. Your job is not to sit in your cabin and not do anything. You need to go out and have conversations with these kids. It doesn't even have to be your own kid. Pull a kid aside from another church, you see them over off sitting by themselves. They just need somebody just to love on them. And I think that's very important that you can do that. But another thing that's very practical is leaders camp is for you too, as well. It's not just for the kids. Your cup, and this was another thing that we were going to talk about later, but we can kind of mix this into this. Leaders, your cup can overflow at camp.
Yeah.
Hmm.
This is a great time through the worship, and you hear the hundreds of kids and their voices crying out in the worship, and you see them going down to the altars and praying beside their preacher. you pray for those kids and you take that moment in and you realize that this is why I signed up to come to church camp and taking the full extent of the moment. And don't just think that the conviction at camp is just for the kids. God could be calling you to do
Hmm.
something great. He's called many men and young adult men and ladies to do something for God during those invitation times. So I think that's huge just for first time leaders and sponsors at camp.
Yeah. It's a good time. You talk about kids meeting other kids in the same situation. There are adults who are going to be there as well that also are in the same situation. There are adults that are certainly there to, you know, figure out life, figure out the next phase for them. There are many adults who have a heart for kids, and maybe they just don't know what to do with their group, and they want to talk to somebody else and get ideas. It's a great way to shop different things, and just filling your cup. One of the things that we talked about specifically was filling your cup because of the fellowship that you get to enjoy. It certainly is encouraging to visit with other folks, and so it's a great opportunity to do that. I would definitely prepare them with some realities that are going to happen. About Wednesday, you're going to start dealing with kids that are really tired. They're off their schedule, they're off their diets, they're just exhausted and wonked. And wonked, 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 if that's even a right word.
Not a
Um,
word.
but well, I just made it up. It works. And there's going to be kids though that are just, it comes to them Wednesday night church, they're going to be like, or they're going to be doing their heads back, and you got to figure out how you're going to try and encourage that kid to stay awake, whether it's moving by them, beside them. You're going to deal with antsy kids that are just always moving around and need to kind of focus in, and you know you're there as a sponsor to assist in directing and facilitating kids hearing the message, which is the most important thing, and everything that goes on. And we need to prepare those sponsors, but we also need to prepare our kids as well. I talk to our kids. I explain to them everything that's going to happen. At the end of every message, there's going to be an invitation. Brother Jason is going to be on the right side over there near the speaker, somewhere in that area. If you need to come and pray, you want me to pray with you, you come to me and we'll pray together. We'll talk, whatever it is. Or if you want to go to the altar and pray, if you want to go as a group and pray, grab a friend. I mean, you have those opportunities there. But some kids have no idea. And there are some churches, y'all know this. I don't know about what Promised Land is doing or what Trinity up there is doing, but some churches bring kids straight off the street. They've never been in even a church service, and you put them in that environment. It comes time for church. Like, so what? Do I just listen to this dude for however long he talks? Is that what we do? But you need to tell that kid what to do. You need to tell that student what's going to happen, and there's going to be some questions. There's going to be some late night conversations. There's going to be times when a kid walks out of that cabin and says, I need to talk to my pastor, and they need to have a long conversation. And if they can't talk to the pastor, we've got to be able to tell a sponsor that, hey, they may come talk to you as well.
Hmm.
Now for I know for Promised Land, I know that the whole staff is going, right. I mean, Brother Josh, Brother Paul, and you. So they've got three adult staff members that can talk, and some churches, I mean, I don't have that luxury. It's just me, and we have a couple other adults that are going. Your mom, of course. So if they can't talk to me, they can go talk to your mom, or they can wait. But I do think preparing those people for that, and praying for the speakers, those are all important aspects of
Hmm.
preparation, getting ready for camp. So I know we're kind of bogging down a little bit, maybe some things. Let's move on. And Parker, what do you think?
Oh, so I was just thinking like, so from the band side coming to the pastoral side of things,
Yeah.
I never really had to think about invitation time, like having to talk to someone because I was always
Yeah.
doing the invitation time. I was always playing. So something I had to think about is like recently is like, I'm pretty comfortable talking to teenagers like, hey, if you need Jesus, like, hey, let's figure it out. I can talk to them on their level. Because a lot of them they're smart enough to be able to have an adult conversation or a conversation that is leaning towards adult like
Yeah.
and like, hey, I really need Jesus. Well, you know your Bible. Well, you know what's going on. You know your XYZ thing. So I've had to train myself coming at a different angle this year where it's kids like third through sixth graders.
Mhm.
I've had to like study and like how would I actually talk to a kid who doesn't understand that they're a sinner? Like they don't get that or grasp that concept. And so I've had to really think that's just like preparing sponsors like, hey, you've got to deal with a big age gap here. So you got to
Yeah.
be able to know how to talk to a young kid versus a teenager versus possibly another adult. So it's just
Yeah.
Absolutely.
important to
That's
prepare them
huge.
that way.
On that too, Parker, I think you nailed it. That's something we really have to be careful of at camp. Be very, very careful of emotional decisions that students
Hmm.
can tend to make. And in fact, some camps that I've been a part of and been associated with, they don't even have traditional invitations. They leave it all to a time of worship. They leave the altar open, but the pastors are not really there to, handle an invitation. That's done afterwards at nighttime, and so the emotion can tend to be taken out of it. There's a great book, How to Lead a Child to Christ. I would encourage everybody to go get and read that book. One of the most practical ones that I can remember is using an object lesson, this pen, represents sin, and this is my life with sin on it, and that can't go to heaven. Christ came and died on the cross to take away our sin. Now, so right now, God looks at our life and sees sin. Can that go to heaven? No. Once Christ forgives us, does that go to heaven? Yes. That's just a simple illustration, and there's a lot of ways, but you have to be very wise as a sponsor at camp. But it's not just the issue of salvation; it's the issue of helping a kid rededicate or dedicate their life. It's helping a young man answer God's call to preach. If that's what God is calling them to. And sometimes the best advice is to see if you can put them off. I did that with Peyton. I know that just kind of put him off for a few, as long as I could until, and that's one way that you can know that God is, the call doesn't leave. Um, but sometimes there can be emotional responses, and we have to be very wise about how we deal with that. So yeah, yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Peyton.
I think
Let's jump down the
I
list a
think
little bit.
that's I think that's very important, all of those things. And we're going to come back to devotionals, teaching, and lessons. And let's kind of go into an atmosphere that all three of us are familiar with. You guys kind of both got thrown into this last year with me. But recreation.
Yeah,
Recreation is huge about camp. Some camps do recreation different. You guys, Dad's seen my recreation at Louisiana Family Camp that I've done for guess I did for about 5 or 6 years, and then this is my first year stepping down because I'm bringing a church group. But let me kind of get you guys your stance on recreation, the importance of it, as well as how to take care of yourself physically while you are at camp. Let's kind of
yeah,
just break both of those together. So,
yeah. Go ahead, Parker. What are your first thoughts?
So I think fueling as an adult and as a kid looks different. Like it
yes.
looks differently. Adults, as Peyton said, if you're not gonna be, you gotta lead by your actions. So you gotta eat, you gotta drink a at least a bottle, preferably probably three plus of water a day.
Yeah,
And I think, a good thing to have on standby is some liquid IV, some Element, uh, preferably Element. That's, it's more based for athletes. It replaces sodium and salts, and that's what you sweat out at camp. So that's actual replenishing more than as Peyton drinks a Coke Zero. That is not going to help you stay hydrated at camp.
that's right.
Um,
Perfect time.
but you need to fuel your body because that's part of mind, body, spirit. You've got to fuel your body so your mind is right, so you can stay, intact. Because if you're grouchy, is that really a fruit of the spirit? No, it is not. Being grouchy is not a fruit of the spirit. So I think fueling your body and keeping yourself healthy at camp is going to just be productive to your attitude, which hopefully will produce good fruit in the
So
Okay.
spirit.
yeah, so when it comes to recreation too, and the competitive side of things, I think you have to look at the end goal of what you're doing when it comes to
Yeah.
competing. Now, whatever we do, eat or drink, those mundane things, we do all to the glory of God. I get it. I mean, I understand that. But there is no district championship on the line. There's no state title on the line. The end goal is that we have augmented an aspect of camp to be more fun focused. And when we take the fun out of it, the fun focus out of it, and become so competitive, our inner fleshly man jumps up. Man, it can really cause a problem. And then you get churches at odds with churches, and you get people pastors at odds with pastors. Can actually really damage the spirit of a camp. And I would just encourage anybody that's going to be competing in the recreation games is remember the focus there is fun. There's really no such. If we say that it's about bragging rights, what are you going to brag about? That you're going to put that on a T-shirt? I mean, are you going to bring that to the national meeting and say we won? No, you're not going to do any of those things. It's about fun, and when we lose the focus on it being fun, then we really run the risk of defeating the entire purpose of camp.
Yeah.
The purpose of camp is not fun, but this aspect of camp. The other thing, and something I've seen over the years, is recreation kind of has a purpose of tuckering kids out. So when it is time to go to bed at night, they go to bed instead of staying up all hours of the night and getting their gel blaster guns out and sneaking out at all hours and doing the things that, as the late night crew has often witnessed, um, you know, even even one church, pranking themselves by moving their own trailer down the road. And I'll never forget that from last year. Poor Hayden and Providence boys. But nevertheless, I think when it comes to rec, everybody should be involved. Everybody should have fun. The spirit should remain light. When it comes to fouls, we're going to play right here
Yeah.
with things like that because the focus is on fun, not really so much this competitiveness that often becomes the focus, and that can be
Yeah.
an issue. But yeah, I think we should all be involved as much as possible and stay hydrated, beat the heat, wear a hat, all those good things. So yeah.
Yeah. That's
So you're
huge.
telling me I
Somebody,
shouldn't hard foul a fourth grader because he's on a fast break?
You should.
that's true.
It depends on who that fourth grader is. If it's that
Um,
kid, maybe so. Hey, we were just playing, Mom. That's what you might want to have to tell the story later on. But anyway, go ahead, Pay. What you got next?
I think a huge thing about recreation that people don't realize is there doesn't have to be any rec at camp. But people take time out of their camp to try to make camp fun for other kids. And I think you could ask anybody who's seen the logistical side of camp, who's done it in the past. I mean, it takes me a couple of months of preparation ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I'm finding if this game would work and how many kids can play this game at one time. And I think what's very important is I can't tell you how many times the volleyball courts, there's 30 bottles of water out there and they're all drank after the first game. You got to hydrate. That's a huge thing. You have to sleep. You have to wear sunscreen, all those things. But whenever it comes to rec itself and what I've tried to build at our camp is to build a bond in rec where you could take the shyest kid on the planet and put them in one of these games and they would have a fair advantage of somebody who's the super athlete at their high school. And that's what matters. It's about breaking down the walls of comfort for some kids where it kind of sounds fun that I want to do this, and it kind of pushes them to want to do it. But also, if there's a church group who can be there, that they could play with such a unity and be with together that it doesn't diminish their character if they do lose. I think that's what Dad said was very important about don't demolish your integrity over a church camp game.
Yeah.
Because people will remember that.
Yeah.
And that will come back.
Yeah.
I think something
sadly,
people also, yeah, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think something people also remember is like I remember in the next camp basketball tournament, there's this little kid that'll hit a three on some tall dude because he was being like, "Oh, you can't shoot or whatever," just messing with him. He knows the kid maybe, and suddenly this kid becomes a camp hero, and everyone loving on the kid all week. So it creates camp bond as far
Yes.
That's
so many
should
so
happen.
many
That's right.
memories.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Great job.
that's just a little bit about rec. If you got kids who don't want to do it, encourage them to go to rec. And rec doesn't have to be the volleyball tournament. It could be something like, hey, go to swim time.
Yes.
Hey, go and do this.
That's
Hey,
right.
go into the zip line. that's what rec is.
Yeah.
It's just where your kid does not in the cabin doing nothing by
It's
themselves.
not just the
Encourage
organized
them.
athletic sport. That's right.
Yes.
We have disc golf now at Bog Springs, for example. We've got all
Yep.
kinds of different things. There's a nature walk. There's a lot of different aspects of rec, and so yeah, absolutely great stuff.
So with that, we'll go next to kind of something Parker is very familiar with about worship. So Parker, kind of your stance on worship, and we'll kind of go from there. I've kind of already expressed that I really just enjoy hearing just the kids crying
Mhm.
out in song, and
Yeah.
whenever we're singing the morning goofy song at Bog Springs,
Mhm.
and I don't want to be a sheep, and I don't want to be a goat, bad, and all that stuff. Like that stuff's it's awesome to me just to hear those little kids
Mhm.
do that. So I love it.
I think something from the side of like the band being a part of the camp, something any type of band. I've never like led a band at like a camp, but I've been a part of bands, and a lot of the good ones that I'm a part of will actually participate in the camp. It's kind of hard with Dino weekends because it's like go, 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 and it's like we need to rehearse. But at church camp, we actually set aside times to practice when they're doing their quiet times or whatever. Um, so that way we can actually be with them during rec. That's what a lot of bands that I've been a part of, the good ones, have done. Like you actually love on the kids and you're there with the kids. We even did a volleyball tournament at next camp. It might have been 2 years ago, where one of the band members was part of our family, and he just became a
Yeah,
cousin,
that's right,
and
cousin
he
Eddie.
played in the volley in our family team. He
Cousin
played on
Eddie.
our team, yeah,
Yeah.
and so he played on our team as family, and everyone loved cousin Eddie. And so I think that's important for a band outside of the worship times to do. And then of course everyone's going to want that band back if they're involved in the camp. But something that I've tried to always do is not give the kids something that they're not going to experience at home.
Mm,
Um, so I mean, at church camp, you got to know your audience of who you're leading. So I mean, if they're not used to, you know, a haze machine and a bunch of lights going crazy, maybe, hey, let's not go crazy with it. Maybe just a little bit. Like, just nice lighting, but not like, don't do laser show. I don't think that's appropriate in worship anyways. Sometimes. Um, but don't give the kids something that they're not gonna see at home. So then that way, like they relate that good worship experience to XYZ thing. You want them to experience a good time in worship with something that they're familiar with. Um, and that's not to say you have to do everything that they're going to do at home. Introduce a song that's a good summer hit or whatever. So I think that's what my thoughts are on as far as like a band aspect. It's just being um, willing to maybe set yourself aside in your preferences. That's what I've tried to do and do what is really best for the kids
Yeah.
and the people that at the camp.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel like when it comes to church camp worship is it never fails. I come away learning a new song. It could even be an old song that somebody is saying for years, but I just have never heard it, and or the way it's brought about. And a couple years ago at Next Camp when I was the evangelist, man, it was the first time we all heard "Son of Suffering." I mean, it just became such a worship anthem, man, and getting to preach after that. I mean, I feel like I could just charge hell with water pistols, man. It was incredible, and I learned a new song. The song by Cam, the one where he preaches in the middle of it. You know what song I'm talking about?
blood.
Yeah, this blood.
The
The
blood.
blood. That's right. Just such an incredible tune, and it never fails. We learn a new song every year, and the thing I would encourage everybody is, we don't have the hymn books out, and it may be a song you don't know, but all the words are up there. And the good thing
Mhm.
about most every song, and this might be Parker would probably teach us all on music theory and why it works the way it works. But almost every song is going to have a verse, and then that chorus is pretty much going to be the same every time it comes around. So if you're paying any attention, you'll be able to learn that song by the time the second verse comes through if you just listen close. And so I find that it's a beautiful aspect of it. And listen, if I'll just say this to others if you know that the camp is going to have a type of worship service that is so counter to the culture of your church, it would be a wise idea to either prepare your students for this, or when you get there, don't complain about it. That's the culture of that camp before you came to that camp. And I think that's an important thing, because if you just have your arms all folded up like a toad frog and the whole time, I mean, my goodness, you're not going to get anything out of anything, because that spirit will move over into the preaching time. And so, yeah, I think you have to be very aware of those things. And I think worshiping with our kids
Yeah.
is a very appropriate part of our worship experience at camp. So, yeah.
And then the last thing we'll talk about is we'll kind of group it up into one thing, the teaching, the devotionals, as well as the preaching. I'm going to go first, and then I kind of, because I've taught at camp and I've done devotionals. I've never preached at camp. Parker, if you can briefly tell your one teaching story that you have at camp, that was hilarious, and I think everybody here will get a kick out of that. And then, and yeah,
I'm already
yeah,
laughing
you
at
go.
it.
Okay, I just Parker, I want you to share that story.
Okay,
Please
so
And then me
what?
and Dad will take over the teaching and devotionals and all
Yeah,
that.
so I'll never teach at camp ever again unless it's like a fill-in. Um, Anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'm petrified of doing it again. Um, so I'm teaching these kids. I think it was like third and fourth grade, whatever, at camp.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
younger.
it was younger kids, and I'm like teaching them. I'm going at it, going through the lesson. I think I'm doing great. And all of a sudden, there's this little turtle that's just going. And this one little kid, shyest kid I've got, doesn't hardly ever talk, just starts, "Oh, there's a turtle." And all the kids, "There's a turtle? There's a turtle." And then they all just start chanting turtle. Like they're all going crazy. And I lost the kids. We had like 10 minutes left. And I'm like,
It's just over.
"Hey, it's done. I can't do anything else." So that's it. Yeah, they all started chanting turtle.
Turtle beats
Um,
Jesus, that class.
yep, absolutely. Yep. It was
Yeah.
horrified. I didn't know what to
Okay.
do. I just was
Okay.
frozen.
I had to throw that in there. But
Forgotten that
I'll go
story.
from
When you
there.
started talking about it, I knew exactly where you were going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
So
my.
I'll kind of go. I've had the blessing to teach almost every year since I've started to preach. And this year's I get to do the 11th to 12th graders, which is kids I'm super comfortable with. I mean, most of our youth group is. One thing that I've learned about teaching at church camp is you have to teach in layers, if that makes sense. And you want to start peeling back the layers that they already have set and preconceived notions that they may already have. And but in doing that, you don't diminish biblical truth. That is the key main importance about teaching it is you give them the Bible and you teach them the Bible and then you discuss what it says and let them talk. Let the kids in your class talk, because once they're talking, they're like, "Oh, well, I had that question or I had that thought," and then they're going to talk about it as well. And you can do that by asking questions, but ultimately by challenging them. You want to challenge your kids where they are having to think and having to learn about something, or maybe change their idea on something that they may think is right, but it's not directly Bible. So, like I know, for example, one of my things this year is one of the lesser known topics that youth kids know about, and that's progressive sanctification. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about at camp this week is how you should, since you've been saved, has your life changed since you've been saved? And you should have evidence of that. And we're going to talk about that with the 11th to 12th graders, and it may hurt and it may sting, but that's the point of our church camp, is for you to be challenged. But I've also done a couple of devotionals. I have stories about devotionals at camp that um, I was brand new to it, and I've had some rough ones. But my whole philosophy of devotionals now for camp is keep it short and keep it personal.
Yeah.
These kids are ready to go to bed, but keep it focused on whatever you think it should be focused on. But ultimately connect with the kids. I think devotions are a great time to ask them, well, what did you learn today?
Yeah.
Were you challenged today spiritually? Did what was something good and bad that happened that day in your time at camp today?
Yeah.
So those are just some things about teachers. Challenge your kids. It doesn't matter what age they are. Make them think. And for devotionals, short, personal. and connect with them. So, Dad, I know you've taught at camp, and I know you've preached a bunch of sermons at camp before.
Yeah.
And so, if you can kind of mainly focus on the preaching and the
Okay.
teaching, what are your thoughts on that? I know we may have some guys who this is their first time preaching at camp. So,
Yeah, it's a I've been incredibly blessed to be able to do that a lot of the times at camp, and it's incredibly humbling to get that opportunity to speak at camp, especially the older I get, still getting asked to do that. It's always surprising. Just a couple thoughts as far as where it goes is you know, my biggest thing with any preaching is know your audience, is realize you're not preaching to a congregation of 75-year-olds. You're preaching to a majority of youth, and your message should be that way. Your message should be geared to that audience, and it doesn't matter what you happen to preach on. It should be relevant to them, and it should be exalting of Jesus and proclaiming of the gospel. One of the things that we never try and do at our camp, at any camp I've been a part of, is a lot of high pressure evangelism. It doesn't mean you can't preach on the cross. It doesn't mean you can't preach on hell and kids walk out and say, "Man, I felt hell licking at my heels. My seat was so hot, I thought I was going in hell myself." I mean, there's none of those things that are wrong to preach on those things. You never want to be guilty of trying to guilt or force a conversion. That is never a healthy thing to be involved in. But just remember your audience. Know you're preaching to children. If you are preaching to children, it's good to do a lot of definitions to explain words. Don't use big words that might show off how smart you are. I think another good thing about preaching at camp is to have some type of object lesson or illustration that grabs attention. One of the things, if I'm ever the first night of preaching, yeah, first night of preaching is, and I did this at next camp, um, is I had a chair and brought it out there and sat on the floor to begin the services because I wanted the children to know that I've been where they've been. I've sat where they've sat. It's been a long time, but I have experienced. I am also a school teacher and a coach, and I see what young people experience every day. And I just want to help people use the Bible in their everyday life and know Christ. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And I believe that there should be a clear presentation of the gospel. There should be a clear appeal to action. But uh, Above all, I mean, if you're a guy that can preach for 45 minutes and people think you've only been preaching for five, then that's great. But those are few and far between people that have that ability. It's not always the easiest thing to do. Sometimes if somebody preaching for 30 minutes, it can feel like an hour and 30 minutes. So
mhm.
you want to be mindful of your audience. And if you notice a lot of this, a lot of stretching, and you can tell people have tuned out, you need to find a way to land the plane and move on. Be prepared. Don't just try and wing it. I'm preaching Wednesday night this year at camp, and I've already got the message finished. So now it's just tweaking and working on it. And there will not be any Legos blown up this year, but there might be some things broken on stage. Just going to throw it out there. So be an interesting, hopefully, hook to grab attention. And and let me say this about using an illustration, an object lesson. If all the audience remembers is the illustration and not what the illustration was meant to illustrate, then you have failed. I'm asked all the time, you gonna break any Legos? You can bring your baseball bat, bro, Jason. You go do. I'm asked it all the time. And when I'm asked, I always ask, "Do you remember what happened to preach that mess?" Yes, sir. It was about tearing down kingdoms and building the right kingdom, and it's building His kingdom, not our own kingdom. And man, that means everything to me. That even though the illustration was really cool and got a lot of attention, they still remember what I preached, and that's what's important. Um, so that's the main thing about preaching. When in doubt, if you're looking for a topic, preach Christ and Him crucified, um,
Yep.
lead people to Jesus. Um, so I'm that's some of my thoughts on preaching. And
I,
I'll
I think I think as the worst preacher in all of our family, public speaker, I always think back to this one moment at camp, and this is just it's not a good option to try. Um, is presenting two options of being able to do something, but one of them is highly unobtainable because all people are going to hear are the two options. Example, saying there are two ways to heaven.
That did happen at one of our camps, and it was not any of us that said that.
It was not any of us, but obviously the two options were repent and be saved. That's true, absolutely. The other one was be perfect like Jesus, and that is entirely unobtainable.
Yeah, I understand what he was trying to do when he said that, and I get the point. But to young ears, all they hear is there's two different ways to go to heaven, and so it was a really awkward moment. And
Well,
so I know we're getting close to finishing up, Peyton. But if you don't mind me sharing this, I reached out to y'all's Uncle Michael. Michael Reese is the quintessential camper. He's been camping forever. He's one of the camp trustees at Bog Springs and over the camps, Pine Springs of the ABA. And I just asked him, I said, Michael, what should a pastor strive to do to get the most out of church camp? What should a youth pastor strive to do? So Parker and Peyton, this is advice for both of you guys. It's advice for myself. And I know we're all doing this, but he said it's threefold. Number one, stay in cabin with the kids. He said, get the full cabin experience, get the uncomfortable bunks, get the smells, the hearing the stories, get the full experience by staying in the cabin with the kids. The second thing he said is be intentional about talking to sponsors, about talking to other pastors, and even students from other churches. And I agree with him because I have friends that I've made just after 4 days at camp, guys that I don't ever see any other time. But when we're at camp, we get to pick up where we left off. And there are guys that I can also talk to. And I find that to be a really great tip. The third and final tip, for this threefold way to get the most out of camp, he said this. He said, pray now and lean in to every sermon that is preached, even taking notes. He said, sometimes we can get in the flesh and be tempted to think that guy ain't got nothing for me. So we tune out. Well, like you all said earlier, all the kids are going to tune out. If they see us tuned out, they're going to tune out. But if we lean in and we're focused on what's saying, they're watching us. And I thought that was a really great thing because none of us are above learning something new for the first time and hearing something from a different perspective. Our flesh as preachers is to always critique the guy that's speaking. And I welcome it. I mean, I'm going to get critiqued by everybody. There used to be an old saying, we go out and hang out with the preachers at night after the kids go to bed, and I listen to you young preachers solve the world's problems or create more of them. I'm not sure what y'all are doing it yet, but there used to be an old saying is if you preached on that day or that night that you didn't go out to the circle because everybody was going to talk about you. I'm always glad to let somebody critique me and tell me what they think. I mean, I know I didn't preach anything heretical. I know that. If I could have done something better, let me know. I want to be better. So yeah, I thought that was a really great three thoughts for any pastor, youth pastor, student pastor to get the most out of their week at church camp, along with all the other things that we've talked about today. I think it's been some good thoughts today, guys.
Absolutely. So y'all have, any closing statements? Anything else?
No.
Just pray for souls to be saved, man. That's the main thing.
Yep.
Hallelujah.
Yep.
Souls saved and lives changed.
In conclusion, just want to thank you guys for tuning in and realize that if you're a church who doesn't go to church camp, reach out and I'm sure that we could help you find one. And it's a great thing that could completely change your student ministry, your church, your members, those around you. It's a great thing to get involved with where you can see a whole bunch of broken people come to know Jesus as their Lord and personal Savior. And that's all that matters. Right. Is that we say it all the time at church camp that hell lost another one. And it happens at every church camp that I know of, is that hell's losing people each and every day at church camps. So it's a great thing to get involved with. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks for the next podcast.
Later, everybody.